The show starts off with Lou Bookman, a kindly old pitchman, and he's peddling toys, products, and repairing them as well. And we notice a man in a dark suit as he wipes his brow like a southern lawyer would do. Hello, sir. May I approach the bench? Not sure why they do that. But the man in the dark suit is watching him, taking notes throughout his pitch. Then we notice that Mr. Bookman loves the children. The children love him. He fixes their toys. He even has ice cream parties for them after dinner. Mr. Bookman is then at his home, where he notices, strangely enough, a man just sitting in his home. Now, Lou Bookman takes this a little better than I think most of us would, with a man just sitting there creepily in our home. But it is a Twilight Zone once again. So Mr. Bookman and he have a conversation. They go back and forth a little bit. And then a young neighborhood girl named Maggie, who we saw on the steps earlier, stops by. He invites her in, but we notice that Maggie cannot see the man.
That gentleman.
What gentleman?
Mr. Bookman, she can't see me or hear me.
Lou, obviously perplexed by this, ushers young Maggie out the door. The two gentlemen go back and forth, and then we realize that this man in the dark suit that's taking notes, sitting strangely in his apartment, is Death. By one of the coolest shots, I would say, in 1959. Boom, there it is. Lou Bookman then realizes this, that this man is, let's call him Mr. Death. And that's right. And he's there to take him. Tells him the whole story about how he's going to take him, why he's going to take him. He's going to die of natural causes by the stroke of midnight. The pitchman then tries to persuade Mr. Death that he has great achievements in the works, that they must be completed before he goes. And then finally, believe it or not, he gets Mr. Death to agree to, let's just say, an extension.
I never made a truly big pitch. I mean a big pitch. A pitch big enough for the skies to open up. You know, a pitch for the angels. Of course, that wouldn't mean very much to you.
Death agrees, and Lou Bookman then believes that he has outsmarted Death. But we all know that no one, and I mean no one, can outsmart Death. Because Mr. Bookman is not ever going to make that pitch that he agreed on. If he just shuts his mouth and doesn't say anything at all, then he'll never die, I guess, in his mind. He then realizes that wherever he goes, even when he tries to run outside, that Mr. Death pops up everywhere. That's right, I know. Now, Death is pretty smart. He realizes what Bookman is trying to do here, so he does tell him that if he finds this loophole, that's fine. He's going to use somebody else that will die in his place. And as soon as this happens, that's right,
I've been forced to select an
young Maggie is hit by a car. She falls then into an in-and-out coma. I mean, listen, she looks very good for a child who was just hit by a car, I must say. But I guess you never know, just might just hit you in the head the right way. But anyway, she sits there, and then we realize that she sees Mr. Death. Knowing that, Lou realizes it's her that's going to take his spot. Perplexed, Lou has to figure something out. So Bookman then begs Death to take him instead of her. But Death is sticking to his guns. A deal is a deal. And Death is intending to take her at the stroke of midnight as he was supposed to. Old Lou there. And Death is intending on doing this no matter what. Now, Lou Bookman has an idea. He will give Death the greatest pitch of all time. His piece de resistance, one might say. But this would buy him time, he believes, until midnight. And if Death misses that timeline, she will not have to go with him. So he does this in fantastic fashion. And guess what? Death misses his mark. He's late for his appointment, and Maggie lives. Now, Death didn't realize that Bookman was making this great sales pitch at the type. I guess he caught him off guard or something. But he does realize that this great sales pitch has met the terms of their original agreement.
Excellent pitch.
Yes, it's quite a pitch. Very effective. It's a kind of a pitch I always wanted to make. A big one. A pitch so big that the sky would open up.
Pitch for the angels.
That's right, a pitch for the angels.
Our lovable pitchman accepts his faith, and he goes to leave with death. Of course, he has to grab his suitcase filled with all his trinkets and toys, just in case somebody has them up in heaven, in which he asks Death, is that where he's going? And Death tells him, yes, that's where he'll be.
Well, there it is. One for the angels. And I am always joined by my main man, Doc Wagner. Doc, you've got everything going on. You know everything about this. And this was a fun one, wasn't it? So let's get right into it, Doc. One for the angels. I know you've researched it and watched it a bazillion times, but I know recently, and I can see by the expression on your face that you're taken a bit aback by this one.
I'm chomping at the bit because this is a good one. We'll of course get into our ratings, but as we always do, let's start out with this awesome cast.
Let us delve into the realm of these performers, exploring their talents and unraveling their intricacies on this stage of shadows and light.
Ed Wynn. I mean, Ed Wynn is one of the most beloved actors and comedians of all time. He was a vaudeville comedian and then made the breakthrough to TV. That's pretty freaking awesome. You and I could do an entire episode on this man. He had his own TV show, and the majority of the population know them as he was in Mary Poppins.
How nice! I was hoping you'd Dana.
Alice in Wonderland.
Sugar, 2 spoons, just 2 spoons, thank you, yes.
Cinderfella, just to name a few. He was actually in another Twilight Zone episode. Did you know that one?
I didn't actually. I didn't.
We'll get to it in season 5, called 90 Years Without Slumbering.
Okay. And then I'm going to go, oh my gosh. I'm sure I will when I see it. Wow. Yeah.
Of course, Mr. Death. He is the mayor of Amity, Murray Hamilton, Jaws, the mayor in Jaws.
And the people are having a wonderful time. Amity, as you know, means friendship.
Graduate, Anatomy of a Murder. The guy is another all-star. Hell of a cast. Just these 2 actors.
And I do have to say, do you think he took his cadence a tad bit from Rod Serling? Did you notice that a little bit when he
dark
was there?
Suit?
The dark suit. Well, even how he talked, like, Mr. Bookman, listen to me really quick. He totally had that cadence.
Exactly.
And I do feel like, I don't know if it happened before him, but I do feel like he took that character of being just that methodical, pen in your hand, and just being like, okay, well then, which we've seen so many people do since then. And I'm going to name one of mine when we go into it, about our actors we'd use. And there's one person I feel like has emulated that, let's just say.
Well, I can't wait for that one. And now you limited me to fun facts. I only have a few, but I could go on and on about this one.
Fun fact, I was rejected from Scientology, so.
Well, let's get right into it. Serling wrote a teleplay called One for the Angels right out of college. It was similar but different. The salesman was a little bit more salesman-like, very aggressive, and Serling worked with Ed Wynn on Requiem for a Heavyweight, which another one we could do a whole episode on. He really wanted to do an episode, Rod Serling did, with Ed Wynn. But let's face it, Ed Wynn is not a salesman. He with his high-pitched voice, his cadence, so he specifically rewrote everything and catered it to Ed Wynn.
Yeah, that is interesting because when you think about that, I mean, obviously Rod Serling was writing forever, and his radio things he did, and you're absolutely right. I mean, because we do go to one later on, the car salesman one, where you do see the salesman, the used car, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
A little bit more of the one. Yeah, he's definitely not in Glengarry Glen Ross.
No, but that's what's so charming about this episode. And because he was a heavyweight, Ed Wynn was paid $5,000 for this episode. And that's about $55,000 in this day and age.
Well, yes, and think about it. When you think of $5,000, go, oh wow. Also, remember in the episode, he does say he was born in 1890. Now,
Amazing.
Think about that real quick when he says that, and then think about that $5,000. So he was the man.
Yeah, absolutely. And he got some residuals out of the deal too, which is for that time was pretty sweet. The first rerun he got $1,000. The second he got $750. And the third he got $250, which doesn't seem like a lot, but residuals, a lot of you as an actor know residuals are where it's at.
Yeah, it's funny because it was nowhere to be found. Then it found its place, the residuals. Now it went away again, because of streaming and everything. But that is interesting because, boy, if he was making $20 every time that I watched it on New Year's Day, he would have been a rich man. You remember that? You remember that, Doc? New Year's Day?
Of course, it's and I know
comments
we have
below. Is that how you started out? I want to know. Is that how people started out Twilight Zone that are around, our age? I wonder if
I think it was back on the UHF channels for back in the day for young Doc. I certainly wasn't around when it was filmed back. It was actually filmed in the middle of July 1959, and then it broadcast back in October of 1959. So I'm old. I'm not that old, but
it's pretty quick turnaround. It's a pretty quick turnaround when you really think about it. Usually they're about a year ahead now, or at least 6-7 months. It's a pretty quick turnaround, but then again, one whatever. But
yeah, and there's so much that has been said about this episode. There's so much that I could say, but I'm not going to, just because it has been said by other podcasters. But what the respect that Serling had for Ed Wynn, due to Wynn's advanced age, the night shots were actually shot during the day. He couldn't stay up late at night, so that we had scaffolding and tarps were rented, and they simulated the evening shots. Which again, 1959, you look at it, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of brought it up in the earlier the monologue I did there, the review there, that the rose just dropping and him just popping up from a different angle. Back then, even I get it. It's a reset of a shot and he's right there, but that was still trick photography, I guess, in a sort of way, which was, it definitely wasn't your pew 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 shooting up on places.
No. Well, we talked about the actors, and I have a question for you, Buck. Two main characters. I cannot wait to hear if this was filmed currently. Who do you have playing the two leads?
Ready with the shot, Mr. DeMille.
All right.
Well, first off, I have to say, in my dream world, I would have right now, of course, none other than Vince.
Hi, it's Vince with Sham Wow. You'll be saying wow every time you use this towel.
He's going to play the salesman. No, not him. He did get in some trouble for biting a lady of the night at one point, and her tongue off or something. So we're not going to use him.
Okay.
But
Fair.
I did. It's funny because you brought it up, and we haven't talked about this at all, like who we're going to use for these. But this is a funny one because I kind of, in my mind, I wrote a note of, if I'm going to go one way with this, a little harsher of a salesman, but kind of soft somewhere, and just a teddy bear. I had them both written down because one way you went or the other, and I didn't know your story that you told. So the one actor I had was a little bit harsher and everything like that. I did go Glengarry and Ross with Ed Harris. I thought Ed Harris would be good now in his age, but he'd be a little bit the harsher one. The other one I would use now, and I believe he is still alive, right? I believe so. I hope so. Paul Sorvino would be good for him. He's still alive, right?
He's passed, but
jeez.
Stupid man! A stupid man!
Cut this part. God, I'm stupid.
Maybe Mr. Death can work out a deal with him.
All right, well, yeah. So I'm going to stick with Ed Harris. Yes, Ed Harris. Be a real rough around the edges. He's older now. But speaking of people that did pass, and we can't use people that passed, if there was, how many people do you go through that you're just like, oh, man, I wish we could have used so-and-so who just left, like Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall in that part.
Well, Robert Duvall's still alive.
Give me peace. I don't know who's been fooling with me. You are the devil.
Who am I thinking then? Oh God. Who's the one from Hoosiers?
Gene Hackman.
No, not Gene Hackman.
Dennis Hopper's been dead for
Dennis
20 years.
Hopper. Yeah. Yeah. I'm saying if you want dead ones.
Oh, okay.
Robert Duvall died? Yeah.
No, he did not.
No, he didn't?
No.
All right. So we just keep this in. Just to show how stupid we are. Paul Sorvino died?
Yeah.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Oh, my Lord. See what I have to deal with, everybody?
All right, anyway. Yeah, so I'm going with Ed Harris. How about that one? Ed Harris, a little gruffier.
I like Ed Harris.
Ed Harris, right? That's great. And Death. I mean, I think the guy who's kind of played that same part forever now is John Hamm.
Solid for Death. Very solid.
I mean, yeah, I think
he could do it with just a slight bit of humor, which towards the end, and we'll get to it, is one of my favorite spots. Is Hamilton showed just that little bit of humor, which Ham could.
He did. So what about you? Who are you going with?
For Bookman, I have Paul Giamatti. I think he can play the schlubby, oh, I can't do anything, down on my luck kind of guy. I think he can play that. We've seen it before. I think he would play it well.
So I think I have the requisite experience and insight to aver that you are and always have been penis cancer in human form.
For Death, I have Steve Buscemi. I think that he, again, very versatile.
Yeah, I just see him sitting there like with that face of his, just staring at him. Like, you got to go here. I'm sorry.
We know he can wear the dark suit as he did in Reservoir Dogs.
I mean, if you show me a piece of paper that says the government shouldn't do that, I'll sign it. Put it to a vote, I'll vote for it. But what I won't do is play ball.
Cool. All right. Well, I like it. I like what you got going on there, Buck.
Do you see any symbols in here or anything like that in this one, or was it just straightforward?
Symbolism is just too delicious.
This is it's an interesting episode. When I watched it as a kid, I didn't really like it. And even as a young man, I didn't like it. But as I'm getting older, I appreciate this episode so much more because really, what is success? Bookman talks about not being successful, but you know what? He goes home, waters his plants, seems like a happy guy. Like success is not always about money in the bank. The man seems happy. And the other thing I love about this episode in symbolism is self-sacrifice. I mean, he gave up. He gave his life for the little girl in the end. So
he did. He did, and I did, and you know, you're right. It is funny because the older you get, the more you do appreciate. I think a lot of things, you know, in general, but a lot of the mortality things, you know, when it starts hitting.
Yeah. In this
you
episode,
lose parents, you lose aunts, uncles, friends, whatever it is, and maybe that's something to do with it. And there is something there. But I'll tell you something I think symbolizes it: the broken robot. The broken robot. Remember, he brings it back to life. Yeah. You know, you just got to twist the thing and go. So, I mean, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe I'm reaching. But, you know, it starts with that robot that's going. The girl brings in a robot, says it's broke. Oh, no, you got to do this. So he fixes it. So in a sense, he fixed himself. The toy maker fixed himself, thought he was going to get his recharge.
Interesting.
But yeah.
I like that.
I might be reaching. I might be reaching.
No.
There. That's the symbolism I went for.
No.
There, for me. So before we get into our reviews and finish it up, what do you think was been influenced by this?
Of genetic, hormonal, and environmental influences.
I think one's, pretty blaring at us. The similarities of movies, things like that. I mean, death has always been something. Making a deal with the devil has always been something.
Right.
That death is the devil. Anything that sticks out to you that they really took from this, would you say?
Yeah, this one was a tough one because you do have so many movies, television shows you meet the devil, death, etc. I want a different angle on this one, and movie starring Nick Cage called City of Angels. Again, getting back to self-sacrifice, he gave up being immortal essentially to go down to Earth, whereas Bookman gave up his life for the little girl, like we just discussed.
Yeah, it's almost this realization of being like, what's it worth? Like, okay, it's almost like being selfish and not being selfish, right? Because Bookman was being selfish when he realized, like, okay, I did my time. We're gonna take a little, at first, kind of being a little selfish. Like he tells him, you've had a pretty good life. You're gonna die in your sleep. This is an easy way. Like, yeah, nobody likes it, but let's go ahead with it. And he really just wants to trick him, even though he doesn't have anybody. And I do think the weird part is, Doc, that, they do go into a little bit of, does he have nothing because he has no family and no kids? No, I don't think he does. But is there a representation of that? Because, well, you can't get out of this because you have nobody. But the kids around town loved him. Who cares? Yeah, and he had an ice cream party for the kids. I mean, come on now. What guy does that? Now we go to jail. I mean, let's face it.
And in 1990, he was beloved by the children. In 1959, how many kids were calling their elders by their first name? And that just goes to show you how beloved he was.
That is a good point. That is a good point. Now, real quick for everybody out there, Doc, I think you'll find this interesting. I did stumble upon something that I just found this that a young writer at one time, and tell me this doesn't sound like influenced by Rod Serling. In a short synopsis I read from this said author, screenwriter, I guess, is what you'd call him. Tell me if you read this in a Rod Serling type voice, if anybody out there thinks this is influenced, and this actually episode, I believe, was influenced in this. And I'll read it to you real quick, like Rod Serling would, I believe. The mystical philosophy of Taoism core metaphor is life is a journey. The Tao is the way, the path, which is constantly changing. Meet Sam Darwinski, a 30-year-old hitman who is walking this path in life and possibly death. But Sam's road isn't filled with your metaphoric high roads, bumps, forks, and fast tracks. It's filled with doors. Doors that bring you places that shouldn't be there. And the only exit is a solution. Now, sounds like a little bit Rod Serling-ish, don't you think?
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because obviously this story dealt with death as well. This story was about a hitman that goes and he deals with, goes to a purgatory of some sorts and then makes a deal at the end of it to save his child. Now, I do know personally that this wasn't influenced at all by this show, but this show was seen by this said author. Because I know this, Doc, because this said author is yours truly that wrote that. Doors of Darwinski, I wrote a screenplay. And it's funny because we talked about this, Doc. Yeah. And I said, I kind of remember writing a script that's kind of like this.
Exactly what you said when we were reviewing this episode.
So, and when I read the synopsis, how Rod Serling-esque is that synopsis?
Extremely. It sounds like it's the opening of Twilight Zone.
And it's funny because I didn't go into it that way. As a matter of fact, in that pitch that I had, because that's a short synopsis to go to investors, and it gives examples of shows that are like this and movies that are like this, how much they made, how big they were. And Twilight Zone was not on there. Oddly enough, I mean, hey, listen, I don't think I put the whole thing together. I had people that did that. But
right.
I mean, but anyway, kind of funny though, when I looked back at the young G. Randall Johnson, aka Buck Wonder, writing that, saying, wow, Twilight Zone really influenced
Well, there
me.
had to have been
more
some
than I
type
thought.
of Zone influence on there, not particularly this episode.
Absolutely. And there was something with making a deal with the devil. I mean, and not the devil, but somebody who was like kind of a guide to death, so it's very interesting. But anyway, I thought everybody would think that's a fun fact.
Awesome.
Maybe not. Who knows? Let us know in the comments below.
I didn't know that you knew what a computer was, so I'm very impressed.
Yeah, you see that? You see how far I've come. But yeah, I mean, anything else? Anything you can add to this story before we get into ratings?
I'm curious as to what your favorite part of this episode was.
The best scene in the whole show.
Well, I'll tell you. Oddly enough, my least favorite part for some reason is the pitch part. I feel like it's kind of awkward when he's pitching and he's like, "Oh, I'll take it." It's a little weird. It's a little forced. I don't know how they could have did it any different way. So that's like, oddly enough, you'd think that was it. I really think it's the part where I think it's the part where he's contemplating, he gets mad before he hits the car hits the little girl.
Right.
He shows this like, no, I outsmarted you. I sold you, blah, 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 blah. And just, I guess that whole part from there to the kid to when he comes up with the plan. I feel like him sitting there on those steps contemplating, I think is usually I go for dialogue. I think that part really just taking that in, in establishing. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's solid. That's solid.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, you mentioned my two favorite parts. Actually, I really liked when Death bought the ties, the silks, because it showed that Death was not infallible. And was it a little hammy? Yeah, but I liked it. I liked it because it wasn't, Death was just not like 100% evil. Like he was persuaded by this schlubby guy. And again, hey, we're 2 for 2 with happiness so far on Twilight Zone, which is amazing. Granted, Mike Ferris had a nervous breakdown, but I still consider it a happy episode. This is a happy episode. I loved it when, and you mentioned it in the very beginning, when Bookman asks Death, well, will I need this up there? And Death says, yes, up there. It's like a, I don't know, feel good story at the end. And I really kind of like that.
Well, there is always something right at the end. When you think about it, something I always forget, everybody remembers the opening monologue of Rod Serling, right? No one really remembers the ending monologues of Rod Serling.
No.
Which he does one at the end all the time. He just wraps it up in a tight little bow.
Yeah.
And if you really heard the beginning monologue and the ending, you might be able to figure out what's in between. But it's the acting and how it's shot what makes it great.
Yeah.
The simplicity of it is pretty fantastic. But yeah, it is pretty interesting. And it was a little hammy, but so is Rocky, right? When you watch Rocky again, like he's grabbing the mic, pulling on his face, like, hey, there's a little over the top. Let's face it.
Yeah, but it's show business, and it's
but you smile when it happens.
Again, watching it as a middle-aged man, I appreciate it so much more than I did when I was a punk kid watching those the New Year's Eve marathons back in the 90s and the 80s. But what are your final thoughts? What do you rate this at, Buck?
Well, who are you to judge me?
Well, you know what? This is really tough because now we just started. It's the second episode. So I'm already like, where do I put this? But I'm trying to look at this like I haven't seen all of them, but it's impossible to do, right? Trying to put myself at this time and all these other parameters. I mean, I think I'm going to go, I think 6.5. 6.5, 6.5. I went back and forth. 6 seemed really low because I do really, really, really like the episode. But I also feel like it's not incredibly a lot going on. It's not too supernatural. It's kind of campy a little bit. You know, Talk to Me Tomorrow will probably be a 7. So I'm going to go solid 6.5. Solid 6.5.
And I am in the same exact boat as you, because I really love the episode, but is it fair to compare? That's what we're going to be learning through doing all these episodes. Is it fair to compare this to Serve Man, to all the heavy hitters? I guess so. An episode's an episode. So with that, I give it a 6. I think a very high 6, very enjoyable, and so it's a good working man's episode, as they say.
And keep in mind, everybody, a 6. This is a Twilight Zone 6, not a show that's out 6.
I don't know the current shows the kids are watching, so I couldn't even compare it to something.
Well, I mean, even the ones that were out then, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
This is a Twilight Zone 6. It's like ranking,
which is there nothing to hang your head on, Murray Hamilton or Ed Wynn's families.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so there it is. Another episode down, episode 2. We're rolling here, Doc. Let's go.
Yes,
See you
sir.
later, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Give me the ball, Augie. Give me the ball. Bad dog.